Starting over. Again. Why is this so hard? Hello and welcome to my channel. This is ThingyCap Games and my name is Adam. So last weekend I went to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Win-A-Case tournament and I wanted to show you guys the deck that I made. It is a ABC deck. It's pretty rogue, but all my matchups were rogue, so maybe that's the meta. Maybe we're going into a rogue meta. I think ABC is a really fun choice right now because it's got a pretty high power ceiling. And I want to go into a little bit of my decision making. So a little bit of the story of the deck. I took a hiatus around the time the pandemic started. So I've been out of competitive play for about 2 years. And I got back into it about a month ago, and I had 2 decks available to me. I had my ABCs, which I'm talking about now, and Salamangreat, which I think on the whole is a little more consistent and a little more modern. I took both to locals in the weeks leading up to this, and they both performed well. The differences that I noted were Salamangreat had a much lower ceiling, but it was able to do what it does, Summon Sunlight Wolf Pass, basically every single game. It was very consistent. ABCs, they kind of lived or died based on their ability to get into Union Hanger and combo off of its pieces. If you're not summoning Buster Dragon, you're in a really tough spot. So I took the knowledge of those 2 events, and I was really wrestling with which one I want to play. It's that classic Yu-Gi-Oh! Dilemma. Do I want power, or do I want consistency? So I turned to a book. This one is Road of the King. It was written by a legendary duelist, Patrick Hoban. You might know him as the guy who plays Upstart Goblin in all his decks. Upstart Hoban. He had a passage about variance. Most players at an event, especially a large event, and the event I went to was, maybe 30 or 40 players, so it was like souped up locals, effectively. But for bigger events, and the philosophy remains, most players are going to do average. To get top cut, you have to perform above average, so you need to play a strategy that allows you to perform above average. And most of the time, that includes, in a non-tier 0 format, that would include a deck that lets you do unfair things a lot of the time and has a higher power ceiling. None of the decks that I'm playing do incredibly unfair things. They both have their weak points. But ABCs has a higher power ceiling than Salamangreat. There are just some monsters that Salamangreat just cannot get over. And it also loses really hard to Nibiru, which really weighed on me because getting the rock dropped on you just ends your turn more often than not. One of the things that I really enjoy about Salamangreat, though, are its linearity. As a player, I'm less prone to making misplays because of how color by numbers the plays are. It's very linear. You make Balinks, you search for this field spell, and you make a bunch of other combos, and you get Gazelle in your hand at the end of it. You have a negate down and maybe a couple hand traps, and then that's your turn. Like, that's the best you can expect out of your turn 1. ABCs, you might pass on nothing, or you might end on like Appaloosa, ABC, Buster Dragon, and a bunch of hand traps. So one is more equipped to deal with problems than the other, and is a little harder to overcome. And at the time of my decision making, I hadn't gotten Access Code Talker yet. I just pulled that like 2 days before the event, and that really changed everything. Access Code Talker made all my games so much easier, because when I was playing ABCs at the locals, I had no easy game. It was Union Hanger, or you have to wait a couple turns and hopefully you can stall them out. So going back to Road of the King, there is a quote that I wanted to share. It is the last paragraph on page 327. As is usually the case, luck tends to favor the prepared. We can give ourselves the chance to get lucky by increasing variance in our deck, choices, and card selection. Embracing the positive effects of variance is how we win tournaments, because we need to get lucky to win. Variance cuts both ways. It can really hurt you just as much as it can help you. However, it's worth the risk because there's no difference between underperforming and being average, because either way you're not at the top table. You need to embrace variance in order to get into the top cut. So high risk, high reward. Embracing variance is how we get there. You need to get a little lucky anyway to win events. With that in mind, I chose ABC over Salamangreat because it had a higher power ceiling. It can get over threats better, and it's a harder hurdle for other decks to get over if I'm allowed to play, if I can get into my combo pieces. Here's the deck profile. So, you have your combo starters. 3 Union Hanger, mandatory. You want to get into it as soon as possible, so you run Terraforming. And you really want to see it, so you run Set Rotation and Mystic Mine. Mystic Mine actually came in incredibly clutch today because it let me sit on it for a couple turns in the last round while I was waiting to get in my combo pieces. And a lot of players, round 1, they don't have the Spell or Trap removal to out this. So if you don't respect the mine, you're going to get slapped by it. It's that good. So unfortunately, I'm a bad player, and I'm running 41 cards in the main. So I'm not really optimized to see Union Hanger as best as I could. So that's something that I would do over again. The ABC pieces themselves, 3 of A, 3 of B, 2 C, and then 1 Union Driver. I think Union Driver at 1 is the correct pick. Drawing into it hurts, but you don't draw into it that much at 1. 2 C's is fine. It does hurt to banish it off of Pot of Desires, but most of the time, if you can get 1 Buster on the field, you can recycle your pieces and make plays that way. So 2 C's isn't as much the bottleneck as it might seem. And yeah, B is the most important piece because it's just getting cards out of your deck constantly. Especially when you're comboing with the Nightmares. You're just adding so many cards in your hand, and you're giving yourself so many discard outlets. So 9 of those main deck monsters. Extenders, 3 unauthorized reactivation. This card is pretty nuts if you have a machine monster on the field, because these pieces, their second effects actually come in handy, because if A is equipped to a monster, it makes that monster unaffected by monster effects, like Nibiru. So if you hold this, and you summon your Dragon Buster, and your opponent tries to Nibiru you, unauthorized reactivation will stop that from happening if you equip an A, so as long as you have an A in your deck, which is why we want to keep the 3 in there. Buster Drake is also useful, if you want to try to avoid spell negation, like Forbidden Droplets. If they don't discard a spell, then equipping the Buster Drake to it just prevents your Buster Drake or Buster Dragon's effect from being negated, and its attack halved. And then C makes your machines immune to traps, which doesn't come up as often anymore. This deck doesn't really care about infinite impermanence or most of the hand traps that aren't Ash Blossom. Most of the time you want to equip B with a piece, so if you link it off or whatever, you get the B search. The real inspiration for the deck was the Sky Striker package. Hornet Drones, getting into Kagari, getting into another Hornet Drones, just gives you 2 free monsters. It's so easy. And Kagari is also a machine monster, so it's unauthorized reactivation material. You can link it into Platinum Gadget if things aren't going so well. Like, the Sky Striker package is awesome. Last time I played, I would play Engage at 3, and I would have a second Widow Anchor. And that was, as you can tell, much more consistent. But Engage even at 1 is still good. Widow Anchor is basically Forbidden Chalice with a little bit more restrictions, but also sometimes it's mind control, and it's just crazy. Like, I wouldn't want to play another Widow Anchor just because the main monster zone is normally clogged. But it's good. This whole package is great. I don't think Engage can come back to more than 1, though. It would centralize the format a little too much. But it is the best extender in the deck. Pot of Desires. Once you get online, you don't care about banishing pieces in your deck. Sometimes it hurts to banish a Widow Anchor or Hornet Drones, but if you don't see it in your opening hand and you have to Desires, you have to Desires if you want to play or have a chance of playing. So, Embracing Variance, the theme of the deck. And then the last 2 kind of reactive spells, Monster Reborn and Triple Tactics Talent. Monster Reborn was a last-minute addition because I found that if I have a card in the graveyard, I could just... Most of the time, you just need a second monster on the board to make your link plays, because that activates all your ABC effects. So Monster Reborn is just like an easy extender. Sometimes it can give you a Link 2, or maybe even a Dragon Buster that was Nibiru'd or whatever. If I had to make a cut, I would probably cut Triple Tactics Talent. I didn't see a lot of hand traps today. Aside for Infinite Impermanence, and even then, Tactics isn't relevant at that point. So, I would probably cut Tactics I don't think it's really good at this moment in the format. Alright, and then, setting these aside, for the defensive cards, triple impermanence, I went really hard on the effect negation, 2 Chalice, 2 effect Veiler. These are all good. I decided to split the difference between Veiler and Chalice because Chalice I could use a little bit more often than Veiler, especially on my turn. And they're also spells for Sky Striker cards. Being able to draw one off of Engage is really good, I hear. But yeah, these are all good. I would run Skill Drain in the main. I didn't have Skill Drain. But Skill Drain is an absolute bomb card. It does so well with this deck. And it almost seems unfair because all of these cards, I don't really care if they're played against me. Because Dragon Buster can either tag out or just wait till next turn to activate its effect again. So like, I'm getting a banish. 9 times out of 10 I summon that card. So these 7 were good. Yeah. Impermanence overperformed. Ash Blossom is pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's the most versatile hand trap in the game. You're going to hit almost everything, and it's not as critical at the moment, but it definitely slows tempo down and lets you keep up with other main decks. So this is good, You're bored if you end on ABC Buster Dragon. That's already hard enough for a lot of decks to combat. This just, makes it a little harder. Ghost Bell. I thought I'd see more Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. In theory, this hurts a lot of decks. I just didn't draw it today. But yeah, this is good, and it also stops Called by the Grave, because that's my biggest worry is ABC Buster Dragon getting Called by the Grave. That would just hurt so much. And then 2 Gamma Seals for those problems that you don't have outs for. This is mostly for Dragoon or even DPE, or just other big boss monsters that you don't want to expend a bunch of resources or play the bait game with spells. Just easy problem, easy solution, just drop a turtle on them. It's pretty good. And then Called by the Grave. Getting Ashed, I don't know how much hand traps are going to be relevant going forward. I think Ash Blossom at least is going to be seeing play. And Called by the Grave hits that, and that's the one I care about the most because I don't want my Union Hanger getting negated. Or at least that add effect, because I need all the cards I can get. So this lets me draw cards, or add cards, and that's pretty good. So that's the main deck, that's 41 cards. Let's move on to the extra deck. So, the reason why we're all here today, ABC Dragon Buster. The best card in the extra deck, it's basically a chaos monster that lives in the extra deck with very specific materials, but it is the greatest. So, easy that. Kagari. It's so good. It's just so good. It's a machine. You can turn it into Platinum Gadget. You can turn it into almost any other Link monster. It gets Hornet Drones back, so you can make an easy Link to. Something that I found often is if you have Kagari and you get Hornet Drones back and you have a B and C, you could summon the B, equip Union Driver with Union Hanger or Unauthorized Reactivation, equip it with C with Union Driver's effect, special summon the C, and then you have 4 monsters on the field. You link Kagari and B off first to give you like a Cross Sheep or whatever. Normally I just do Cross Sheep because it's generic. Then you get the B search, and then that just opens up a whole lot of possibilities because then you could link the C and the token together to make IP Masquerena. And then you get the special summon with C, this is effect, make the A, and then at that point you can either make Nightmare Unicorn, you can make a Nightmare Phoenix, you can make Appaloosa with 3 materials with the A that you summoned off the C, the Masquerena, and the Cross Sheep. Just, Kagari opens up a lot of plays for you, and then you get your ABC Dragon Buster out. It paves the way for a lot. It's also the biggest like hand trap bait in the deck. Like, this thing got Veilered and Impermed all day, and like, I really don't care. Like, Kagari in itself just does so much. If it's costing you a card, it's doing its job. The Nightmare Package. Phoenix and Unicorn overperformed. Cerberus I only summoned once to get rid of a Nibiru token that I gave my opponent. That was too big for me to run over, and then I ended up scooping that game anyway. But yeah, Phoenix and Unicorn especially just you know, B and C going into Phoenix, paving the way by blasting spells and traps with another monster on the field, get Unicorn out, take another spell or trap away, and just getting the road paved for a safe Dragon Buster summon is so important. And then Unicorn can just go right into Access Code with one more monster. And then the last two generic-ish Link 2s. Platinum Gadget is a necessary evil. Sometimes you can only make B and C with Union Driver and Hanger. And this just gets you ABC Dragon Buster first turn, almost guaranteed, with the special summon effect that's delayed. Cross Sheet, its effect, a special summon from the graveyard, came up a couple times, and every time it did, it was just an absolute blowout. I think probably the best generic Link 2 that I could run. I was running Barricade Board Blocker, but I had to think about timing issues a little bit too much with that, and Cross Sheet just has better arrows, a little more generic. I like it. In IP Masquerena, like, next to Kagari, this was the biggest hand trap bait, because when they would impermanence on their turn, they would always imperm the IP Masquerena because they knew that Buster Dragon would just tag out. They didn't want to be unicorned on their own turn. So, for that reason alone, Masquerena is worth it. And then the big links, Access Code Talker, Appaloosa, and Underworld Goddess. I didn't summon Appaloosa at all during the event, but in theory it's good. It's really good going turn 1 if you can make it. But Access Code, more often than not, I'm summoning Access Code and then I'm following it up with a Dragon Buster. And then I didn't get Nibiru at all, so that's probably why I did so well. But, 5,300, 3,000, that's 8,300, that's game right there. This is really good. I'm so glad I pulled this. This really made the event a lot different. When I was playing without Access Code Talker, every game was an uphill battle. There were no easy games, and then Access Code just turns the easy button on. And then Underworld Goddess is, a Link 5. If you can make Boral Sword Dragon, you can make Underworld Goddess if your opponent has a monster on the field, and then it's just an extra deck version of a Kaiju. So that's really important, especially with IP Masquerena, just having the threat to steal one of their monsters, turn off their graveyard, and be a skill drain for a turn. It's just really good. And then Xyz monsters, I didn't summon any of these today. I think Link summoning is my preferred summoning mechanic because you get your effects off A, B, and C pieces. But in theory, if these would come up, they would be good. I think I chose Baguska over Abyss Dweller because I thought on-field effects were more important, hence the 7 main deck effect negation cards. So this is just a good stall card. It's kind of on par with Mystic Mine. And then Dugaris is an extender because I like it better than the Tsukiyomi because you can draw 2 cards, discard, and that discard could just get you into Dragon Buster pretty easily. And skipping your draw phase isn't a real hindrance because you're going to see that card anyway, just a little faster. And if it's a hand trap, you want to see it earlier because it doesn't do you any good to draw it on your turn. So that's 15 cards in the extra deck. Overall, the only thing I would probably change is taking out Dugaris for like Barricade Board Blocker or something. Just to give my Link 2 a little more toolboxy nature, just to get another like free discard if I don't have the targets for Nightmares. Moving on to the side deck. I wanted to give myself some good going first plays. None of these cards really came up, I just never drew them. I 2-0'd everybody except for round 3. But I want to give myself some good going first plays, so Anti-Spell Fragrance turns off a lot of the board breakers, and Dimensional Barrier just shuts off a lot of decks pretty easy. Never came up, but good in theory. I wouldn't change them going forward. 2 Nibiru for decks that like the Combo Wombo. The only time I summoned it, I made my opponent a token so big I couldn't get over it. So I scooped that game, but also in theory, pretty good, and I feel safe holding it most of the time. Dark Ruler no more. I only run one of it, never drew it. I have 2 more that got lost in the mail, so I refuse to buy them until they arrive or until the seller gets back to me, but in theory, it's good. Twin Twisters and Harpy Feather Duster. I think Twin Twisters is better, but Harpy Feather Duster is just more free. But Twin Twister, it's a quick play, so you can activate it on your turn if they flip the anti-spell during your standby phase. The discard outlet is very nice. Just ditching your pieces for free. It lets you get all your plays in order under Nibiru if you're worried about that. Twin Twister is good. I get a lot more mileage out of it than Cosmic Cyclone. But yeah, they're all good. Last three, Artifact Lancia. It can just end a turn. It's a pretty high impact card. Once at locals, my opponent evenly matched me, and I forgot I had Lancia in hand. If I don't forget that I have it in hand, then it's really good. But it's also just another card you feel safe using. It does conflict a little bit with Buster Dragon, so sequencing becomes a little bit more of important. But if you time Lancia right, it's a pretty high impact card. And then the last card is Token Collector. I thought there would be more Sword Soul, and I didn't see any today. It's okay. This hand trap is nuts because it can special summon itself from the graveyard, so it's discard fodder as well for Dragon Buster, which I just think is the coolest thing. Like, it kind of makes me want to run Foolish Burial a little bit, or like Beatrice in another deck, just to dump this, to just turn off all tokens. And if this is on the field, it stops Nibiru from being summoned, which is kind of nice. So, that is my list. I went 4-0 at this event. I 2-0'd everybody. Most games ended with Access Code Talker and ABC Dragon Buster on the board, just pushing for game. It felt really good. Like, anytime I drew Union Hanger, I felt like I was in the game, or unauthorized reactivation. I thought that I was making plays, and I don't know if my opponent's just dead drawed or I got exceptionally lucky, but that's why we embraced the variance, and we chose the deck with the higher ceiling. So all in all, I think I did pretty good. I won a bunch of tins, and I pulled some crossout designators, and that felt nice. It's nice to open up packs of cards. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. Please like, comment, or subscribe to this channel if you want to see more. Till next time, my name is Adam from Thinking Cap Games, signing off. Waving. I'm waving. I don't know how to sign off. I didn't rehearse this. Finger guns. Boo, 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 boo. Comment, like, subscribe to this channel, and where's my script?